السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of God, most grateful, most merciful, most compassionate, I'm Sami Ayef, Director of Communication in ARIJ. I'm really honored to open the ARIJ, the 16th ARIJ Forum here in Amman, Jordan, today, Friday, December the 1st. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, everyone who took the trouble to be with us here in person today. And we are honored that more than 500 colleagues of both genders are attending in person, and more than 1,300 colleagues who registered to attend digitally. We have simultaneous interpretation in both Arabic and English. And for the 4th year in a row into sign language. The past 2 months have been the most difficult, humanly speaking, morally and medially. The past 2 months have been the deadliest for our professional colleagues in 3 decades globally, as the Israeli bullets killed 70 of our fellow journalists, male and female, in Palestine and Lebanon. May God have mercy, may their souls rest in peace, and we really condole ourselves and their families. For the souls of journalists and civilians, I ask the honorable audience in both physical and virtual worlds to stand for a minute of silence.
شكرا لكم. تفضلوا بالجلوس.
Thank you. Please take your seats. Everywhere around us in this forum, you would find some pictures of our colleagues who were killed during the past weeks and how they were killed. We have added symbolically the journalist Jamal Khashoggi, whom we called for retribution at the ARIJ Forum back in 2018 for punishment. Journalists are not figures or pictures. Last week, and I wanted to be in the arbitration ARIJ rewards established last week. I was in the pro-Palestinian panel, and we were surprised in the committee that the director of the documentary was killed in Palestine, targeted by the Israeli bullets. When the journalist becomes a real story inside a story, or a picture in a story, we experience a very sad reality. However, when we were shocked about what happened on October 8th, which was not expected. We did not expect what, just as we were unexpecting what happened with the assassination of Khashoggi. All parts of exclusion and all forms of exceptions. Last year, Shireen Abu Akleh was present in our minds, and we presented an investigative report on the killing of Shireen. We were honored to meet Shireen's brother, Tony Abu Akleh, who called for an end to impunity. Let's watch. The assassination of Shireen in cold blood puts every responsible person accountable, and also to demand the freedom of journalism for journalists and to hold the killers accountable. This represents the best reward for or honoring that can be presented to Shireen, whereas silence would be an encouragement to the killers to continue to kill and assassinate the freedom of expression. Shireen Abu Akleh would not be the last and was not the last in this path. We promise you in ARIJ, along with our partners, not to give up our duty to be credible and as we report on the reality, and not to stop persecuting the killers so that they would not resort to impunity. There is a collective statement that I urge you all to sign on outside this hall. We are proud that the keynote speech at this forum was given by the head of the Committee to Protect Journalists, CPJ, an association that demands freedom of expression globally and the protection of the right of journalists to tell the stories safely, securely, and without fear or intimidation. Jody Ginsberg is a British and South African journalist who worked with Reuters as an international correspondent covering news from Nigeria and Ivory Coast to Dublin, Ireland. Over all the social media and media outlets, Jody has called and asked for protection of journalists everywhere. She traveled from New York to be here with us. Jody, please.
Exactly 2 years ago today, I was in New York at the final interview for my dream job, to be the new leader of the Committee to Protect Journalists. I believe that telling stories is the most powerful way we have for exposing injustice, for righting wrongs, and for recalling our shared humanity. And I was lucky to work as a reporter and editor for many years. So I could not think of a better way of repaying that opportunity than leading an organization whose entire mission is to protect journalists, no matter who or where they are, so they can continue to do this essential work. In our fractured world, journalism has never been more important, and it has never felt so under threat. The past 8 weeks in particular are some of the worst that our journalistic community has ever experienced. And that's why I am so grateful to be with you today, to grieve collectively and to consider how we, as a community, can heal. I want to start by acknowledging clearly the horror of what is happening in the region. Since the Committee to Protect Journalists was founded 42 years ago, never have so many journalists been killed in such a short period in a single conflict. These are our friends, our family, and I stand alongside you in mourning the loss of our colleagues, many of whom bear the impossible burden of documenting a war without any of the protections or guarantees of at least partial safety usually afforded to war correspondents. Not only that, but too many of our colleagues in Gaza and in the region have had to carry the weight of proving their humanity, of justifying themselves and their work to the outside world. They are doubted, despised, and dehumanized. And yet without these individuals, we would have no clear view into this war. We would be blind and the community silenced. I want you to know that you are seen and you are heard. The theme of this year's conference is cross-border collaboration in a fragmented world. The past 2 months have reinforced how fragmented that world is. The latest war in the Middle East came at a time when we were already facing conflicts and crises on multiple fronts. The ongoing wars in Yemen and Syria, in Sudan, Ukraine, the displacement of hundreds of journalists worldwide from Afghanistan, Myanmar, and Russia to Central and South America and across Africa, and a rapidly escalating climate crisis that has caused devastation, such as we saw in Libya just a few months ago. And all of that alongside a decline in democratic norms and values worldwide and the continued suppression of rights for women and minority groups. Now, more than ever, we need the reporters who document abuses, who record the damage caused by war and by climate change, and who investigate corruption and the abuse of power. ARIJ, our host, is a shining example of that. Take its investigation into Yemen's war wounded, which resulted in a hospital director and a doctor being charged with causing the death of an amputation victim. Or the investigation by Mohamed Tahrut with ARIJ support that prompted Moroccan authorities to remove facilities and pumps that were destroying irrigation systems and threaten the environment in the Wadi Shabuka region. That's impact. That's why most of us became journalists. Such investigations are also examples of how journalists and media organizations can have impact despite the ever-growing challenges we face by working in collaboration. The success of investigations by networks such as the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists and echoed in the work of groups like the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project and Forbidden Stories shows how we can help both protect and enhance journalists' work. Collaboration can also keep journalists safe and help ensure resources are used effectively. Gaza Media Resources, the collaborative effort of Midan, Witness, and SMEX, launched just this week to provide an open access library of resources on topics like digital security, open source fact-checking, is one such example. Another is the Legal Network for Journalists at Risk, a group of 17 member organizations, including CPJ, launched last year to help share and meet requests for legal support for journalists, one of the most rapidly growing areas of need for reporters everywhere. The Legal Network builds on the Journalists in Distress Network, which brings together a number of organizations across the globe who provide emergency assistance to journalists and whose information and resource sharing has helped, among other things, to deliver much-needed safety and trauma workshops and respite care this year to a group of Sudanese journalists, as well as to exiled journalists from Russia and elsewhere. We can and we should do more. These growing global crises will require us to be even more innovative, even more collaborative in our approach, to work with one another more closely and to raise each other up. Change begins at home. CPJ can do better, for example, by publishing more content in the language of the communities of those stories we represent. We can do better by ensuring we use our fundraising power to give directly when needed to community organizations who are best placed to provide direct emergency assistance, as we have done in this latest war. Emergency support and advocacy organizations like ours can do a better job partnering with media development groups to help people transition from short-term assistance to long-term support. and we can do a better job recognizing what we don't know or don't do, and should know and could do. None of us can do this work alone. If democracy dies in darkness, then humanity dies in isolation. Journalists are essential in reminding us of that collective humanity, and it is together that we will protect this essential craft. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. شكراً جودي. دربت
ARIJ, on the course of 17 years, have offered training everywhere in our Arab world, provided training to more than 17 journalists in Gaza alone. During the past 5 years, we have trained more than 250 male and female colleagues, ARIJ and Gaza. Let's watch.
دربت أريج وجاهياً وافتراضياً مئات من الصحفيين والصحفيات الاستقصائيين ومدققي ومدققات المعلومات في غزة في فلسطين على مدى السنوات 15 الماضية. قتل الجيش الإسرائيلي عشرات من زملائنا الصحفيين والصحفيات، وقتل عائلاتهم وأصدقائهم، الأطفال والكبار. لم يسمح الجيش الإسرائيلي لأي منا بدخول غزة للتغطية الصحفية أو المساعدة الإنسانية أو التحقيق أو تدقيق المعلومات. لم يترك الجيش الإسرائيلي مكاناً آمناً في غزة. تستمر أريج في تدريب ودعم الصحفيين والصحفيات الاستقصائيين للتحقيق في جرائم الحرب وكل أنواع الخطايا. تستمر أريج في تدريب ودعم مدققي ومدققات المعلومات لدحض المعلومات الخاطئة والمضللة وتوفير المضمون المدقق ما قبل وما بعد النشر. من طوكيو إلى واشنطن، في كل عواصم العالم، كل الضمائر الحية تظاهرت للمطالبة بوقف إطلاق النار فوراً. دون التعاون العابر للحدود في هذا العالم المنقسم لا يمكن أن نحقق الأثر المنشود.
Our duty is to be the voice of our profession, of our colleagues in the heated field, especially for ARIJ participants. We present messages from the journalists from Gaza a few days ago. Let's watch.
إحنا كصحفيين خرجنا من بيوتنا، مكاتبنا استهدفت، بيوتنا تم قصفها، نزحنا أيضا كالعائلات التي نزحت من شمال قطاع غزة.
كنت أخاف وأخشى أن يكون أحد من أصدقائي، من أهلي، من إخوتي، من إخواني، وقد حدث بالفعل.
تلقيت في الأيام الأولى للحرب نبأ استشهاد أخي، لكن وللأسف الشديد لا وقت لدينا للحزن، لا وقت لدينا لوقف العمل.
لسه امبارح فاقدة عدد من أفراد من عائلتي 12 شخص، فحاسة إنه المشاعر اللي جواتي بدأت تبلد.
الكل مستهدف، الحجر، الشجر، البشر.
كمية المجازر اللي صارت فيها، القصف، النزوح، بيوتنا مثلا تدمرت فيها، أهالينا راحت.
أغلب المشاهد اللي بشوفها واللي بصورها هي للأطفال والنساء.
تعرض بعضنا للإصابة في مجمع الشفاء الطبي.
ما في مكان أو مبيت للصحفيين تحديدا للصحفيات، خصوصا إنه الصحفيين بيقدروا يناموا بأي مكان لكن الصحفيات ما بيقدروا يناموا بأي مكان.
أنا أهلي بشوفهمش ولا بحكي معهم.
وصلنا التغطية بصعوبة بالغة جدا وبمخاطرة عالية جدا،
لأنه موضوع الاتصال إحنا بنعاني منه بشكل كبير.
كل خبر كنت أشعر وكأنني جزء من هذا الخبر.
مع تغطيتي لداخل المستشفى اضطررت إلى رؤية مشاهد أنا ما كنت أحب أشوفها.
الحرب غيرت كل منظوري للحياة فيما يتعلق بتجهيزات الحياة، بالنظر إلى شراء أمور شخصية، بالنظر إلى المأكل، إلى المشرب، إلى العلاقات.
أنا غير هيك، يعني بحب الضحك، فرفوشة، ما بحب جو الكآبة والحزن. الحرب هاي طفتني بمعنى الكلمة، حاسة حالي إني أنا حدا تاني خالص عن شخصيتي الاعتيادية.
احنا فقدنا ناس كثير عزيزة علينا، أهالينا، ناس أصحاب عنا. احنا كل يوم نفقد ناس صراحة، يعني حتى الحرب لهالقد ما خلصت واحنا خايفين من اللي جاي.
وليس أفضل.
There's no better person to talk about Gaza than the award-winning director, the son of Gaza and the son of the Palestinian refugees. He has directed more than 40 humanitarian documentaries and TV investigative reports, including Gaza Human Shields, which we are showing today, this evening, followed by a discussion with him. Among his works are Life by the Table, Empty Intestines, Gaza Lives, Palestine 1920, and others. Our guest founded a production company whose teams covered all the wars in Gaza. His family is now in Gaza. May God protect them all. We are honored to have the Palestinian director Ashraf Mashharawi with us. Please. Hello, greetings all. First, this picture, actually, I felt so tired, exhausted when I saw this. Very sad when I saw this picture. This is Gaza, which has so many parts. I'm too emotional now to see your whole city disappearing, leveled down. It's so sad. First, I would like to thank you for attending and for listening to our speeches. I would like to remember my colleague journalists who up to this, among whom 70 were killed, which is a very big number. When in the journalism world, when you say 70 journalists killed in the war against Gaza, this doesn't mean that Gaza is a small city, but it means that during the Second World War, the world lost 63 journalists, whereas in Gaza, in less than 2 months, we lost 70 journalists. So you can imagine how difficult it is to be a journalist in Gaza. 70 journalists in less than 2 months, other than the loved ones that we lost, the injuries, the casualties, and our, of course, friends in Lebanon who joined this number, the number that is a huge one. Today, I realize that I'm with a group of a special group of journalists who've done investigative reports, who investigated on a number of cases and issues, and I know many of you have paid us a high price in trying to express their journalistic mission and a message that is very important to support and serve their community and to increase civic safety and the community and international peace in defending the victims. This is our mission as journalists today. I'm here not because I'm just a journalist from Gaza, but I have a 20-year experience. I spent the beginning of the second Intifada, the beginning of the year 2000 under the blockade on Gaza and all the wars on Gaza. I've been able to cover all of them. During the 2009 war on Gaza, I lost my brother in the direct targeting of our home. And through this war, that I hope there's an end for this war, we have paid a huge price as journalists and as Palestinians. I didn't only cover in Gaza, but elsewhere. For example, Libya, the Libya events, and in one of my coverage reports, I covered Yemen in 2014. I've been in Ukraine. So in my experience, I've seen so many struggles, destruction and wars across the world, and I try to handle them based on my in-depth experience in Gaza. What I want to say here is that the destruction, whether in Gaza, my homeland Gaza, Ukraine, or elsewhere in the world, honestly speaking, all the Gaza wars together, all the world wars together, I see are aside and are I can't compare to what's taking place in Gaza. What's happening in Gaza now is a war. It is a genocide that cannot be described. We're without any warning or threats, we get killed. So we became any journalist who leaves his or her home doesn't know if he would go back or not. To put you in the picture, every day since the beginning of the war, I have a team in the northern part of Gaza, Bet Hanoun, Jabali, and Bet Lahia. I have teams covering also Sheikh Radwan, Rimal. I have another team in Deir al-Balah and Khan Yunis, and one covering Jihr Oria. So we are across the Gaza Strip. I follow up with them every day. About 18 hours until today, this morning, 2 a.m. I wanted to get some sleep and wanted to wake up at 10, but I have calls from my teams in the northern part of Gaza, Sheikh Radwan and Gaza, and they said we have shelling now, there's war, the war's back, so please send the pictures. I was working since 6 a.m. and I've been sending pictures to the channels, to the pictures of Gaza, to the channels. Until today, I can only sleep 2 or 3 hours. There's no chance for us to sleep while there are people getting killed. There's news items. I can recall a very painful incident that was a big challenge. And other than other challenges, as we do the coverage, our media coverage, when the truce or the ceasefire took place, the first thing my team told me, you know what they said? They said, today we can sleep and we know that we would not get killed under the shelling. We can wake up. We don't have fears that we die or that we get bombarded. Look how cruel these statements are. People wish to wake up without shelling or bombardment. That's why the first threat that we face, all of us in Gaza, we are convinced that there's no hope. All of us are targeted. We are a target, and this is a real feeling. Perhaps we don't say it directly, but it's our inner feeling. It's our inner conviction that on the ground, many of our colleagues take their protection tools. They wear the helmets and the jackets, but they are very aware that such measures are really useless because many of our colleagues got killed even though they were wearing or taking all these safety protection measures. So they only wear them because only if an investigation takes place later, this would not serve as a justification that we did not take the safety measures. Our colleague, the late Shireen Abu Akleh, was a good example, the best example. That she was killed while she was wearing the helmet and the jacket. So this should not serve as a justification.
أما كسلامة للأسف لا قيمة لهذه الأدوات ولا لهذه الإجراءات. وأعتقد نحن الآن بحاجة كمجتمع، يعني التدريبات اللي بناخذها في سلامة الصحفيين والورشات المتعددة والأوقات الطويلة لازم الآن يعيدوا النظر فيها على وقائع حرب غزة، لأنه الآن الواقع مختلف تماما. إذا انتقلنا من الأمام، المقرات تاعتنا كشركات طبيعي الكل لما يسوي مادته صحفية بيرجع على مقره، بيكون عنده جهاز المونتاج، بيكون عنده أدواته، حتى بيكون عنده أجهزته. لكن إحنا للأسف من اليوم الأول بدأ الاستهداف لمقراتنا الإعلامية وشركاتنا الخاصة. أنا أحد الناس الذين فقدت مقر الكامل.
Gaza were targeted since day one. I was deprived of my own internet. Part of the archives was disrupted, and our helmets and other equipment that we lost, and there was something that is worse than that, that even the commercial companies specialized in selling the equipment were shelled and were disrupted. And the equipment were so even if you want to buy substitute equipment, we can't find. It's a horrific situation. Communication, we suffer a lot when it comes to communication. Now, communication is very important in conveying the message and to communicate amongst ourselves. Imagine one time I needed to do 431 communication attempts to try to get in touch with my team on the ground. Imagine 34 attempts of communication and no answer. And even if you get lucky, you could barely hear him or her in order to get a news item. Some of our teams in the northern part, it took me a week to know if they were still alive. I was trying to reach out to them, but I was unable to know if they were still alive. So this is a kind of concern and an anxiety that we live through. So the communication and or also conveying the message via internet. Sometimes you have to go to the borders to get closer to the Israeli network. It's a long story, but this would limit our ability to convey the news and the messages. One night I received a call at 1 a.m. From my relative in Egypt who told me, your father's in Gaza, is at an UNRWA school, try to call him. So I found out my father was at Al-Falah UN UNRWA school. That was shelled 11 hours before, and nobody knew about them. They tried to call the Red Cross, who was unable to help them. He said, my relative is a journalist and he can help. Two of his mother-in-law were killed, the sons, and also another person were bleeding 12 hours. They said that when they once arrived at the school, there were 30 casualties and other injuries who were still bleeding for more than 12 hours. After 3 or 4 hours, we've been able to send this news to the media, and the number rose to 150. It was 50. About 120 persons got killed because nobody knew about their injuries or their suffering. So, and there are other cases like that that the media was unable to reach out to them. So the value of the media, we tried to call. We played the role of conveying the message through the media to the humanitarian institutions to try to save some human beings, but the lack of communication increased the number of casualties just because us as journalists and as humanitarian services are unable to access the news and the stories. The teams had to walk for 3 or 4 hours to reach the places. Many stories. I want to cut the long story short. I know that this conference would takes us a lot of time to share stories. I'm here to share so many things with you. If you have questions, I know it would be endless to speak. It's a horrific situation. There are too many stories. However, what I want to emphasize is that us as a journalism community, we need to remind the people that these are journalists. They are human beings just like us. And what occurs in Gaza today can be repeated in elsewhere. We need to work as one body to feel the same pain. the pain of the bleeding or the emotional bleeding in us as journalists. We need to remember that we are human beings who have families, who have sons, wives to go back to at the end of the day. This is mentally difficult. It's very difficult to read certain messages. We need to do to protect these journalists. We need to do our investigations about them, about the journalists, and to think how to prevent the number from increasing. Our abilities are very limited, though, and if we lose the journalists who are currently in Gaza, if we lose more of them, we would be losing more of them, of our fuel. They serve as a fuel for us. These journalists in Gaza. Enough of silence. Enough of not taking defending our colleagues seriously. I hope for the responses to be really swift and effective, and to see action. Thank you so much.
شكرا لك أستاذ أشرف.
Thank you very, very much. The world is divided about what's happening in Gaza, that is sleeping on the Mediterranean shore, as if it's fighting to cross across borders to a point that links Asia to Africa. It dreams of freedom, of dignity, and of safety. The occupation bans us from entering Gaza. However, Gaza is with us. It encompasses all our activities to be there, despite all borders and despite all divisions around the world. Our slogan this year is cross-border collaboration in a fragmented world. It's not just a slogan that is held. It's there. It's embodied here in reality. In this very room, there are colleagues from 45 countries around the world to confirm that cross-border collaboration is possible despite our fragmented world. I ask here my colleagues in every country, every continent, to stand when I mention the name of their continents. And if a colleague, for example, resides in Portugal but is originally from Brazil, she has the right to choose whether to stand with her continent or the origin of her origin, or the one that embraces her. As for the colleagues in the virtual world, please include an emoji when we mention the name of your continent. We start with American continent. We have colleagues with the Latin American continent. We have with us colleagues from Ecuador, Venezuela, Colombia, Argentina, and Brazil. I please ask you to stand up. Thank you very much. From North American continent and Canada, from the USA and Canada, I ask all these attendees to stand up, please. Thank you. From Europe, we have colleagues from France, Germany, Sweden, Norway, Britain, Ireland, Ukraine, Denmark, Netherlands, Italy, Belgium, Romania, Greece, Spain, Lithuania, Georgia, and Poland. And if I've forgotten a country, please excuse me. Thank you. From Africa, we have with us from South Africa, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Egypt, Sudan, Libya, Tunisia, Algiers, Morocco, and Mauritania. Thank you all very much. From Asia, we have with us from Turkey, Pakistan, India, Tajikistan, Nepal, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, Jordan, and Palestine. And with us, we even have with us from Australia, guests from Australia. I would like to remind you quickly about the code of conduct of ARIJ that was exceeded by and signed by every of you once you wanted to attend this forum virtually and in person to worry and to take care of all. It's to respect privacy, different opinions, intellectual property, pluralism, regardless of the race, color, belief, religion, sex, nationality, origin, national affiliation, or disability. This year was filled with projects which we all worked on in ARIJ and which had benefited ARIJians. Let's watch.
تحرش وتحرش إلكتروني، تهديدات ومحاولات إسكات.
أسبوع هو عمر مدرسة بادية عين سامية التي أقيمت لخدمة أطفال تجمع عين سامية البدوية.
لا تقتصر إجراءات السلامة المهنية الصحفية للصحفيات والصحفيين الاستقصائيين على العمل الميداني.
الحماية القانونية التي قد تكون متاحة لمطلقي الصفارة تعتمد على 7 عوامل.
وتشرفنا في أريج.
And in ARIJ, we were honored this year to have a delegation with us with 30 colleagues who were in the international conference of investigative journalism in last September in Sweden. It was attended by more than 2,000 journalists, where we were keen to continue some of the recordings from colleagues when we asked them, what do you say about ARIJ? Let's listen to what they said.
I'm personally, I've done a lot through this collaboration between ARIJ and SCOOP. I learned a lot about the MENA journalism. I learned a lot about how you are working, and you have given me much inspiration. And I hope I've been able to give you some inspiration back as well.
It's one of the new ideas in journalism that started about 15 years ago, and it's really changed the landscape of journalism and is influencing a lot of different organizations now. And there's many, many more organizations that are out there. I see Rowan from Arab Reporters for Investigative Journalism, which is another kind of collaborative cross-border organization. So there are a lot of organizations out there now, many more than 15 years ago.
I'm one of the people who's been with ARIJ since the beginning, and I've watched the organization grow and diversify and spread throughout the Arab world. It may be the most successful pan-Arab institution ever. This is a success, and it changed investigative journalism. It opened up a new part of the world to investigative journalism, and the materials we developed at ARIJ became a global standard. The standard method of investigative journalism came out of ARIJ, not out of the United States, not out of the United Kingdom, here. This was new too.
And so ARIJ is the kind of organization that I love meeting. Like, I love meeting the members of ARIJ, I love going to ARIJ events. It's fascinating, I love it. And for me, ARIJ is really creating all these journalists who are coming together to do all these incredible stories. And you can see that that's going to have just continual impact from now and into the future, not just in terms of stories that are created, but also the journalists that are trained.
With ARIJ on many international projects on surveillance, on tax evasion, on corruption, and ARIJ proved to be a perfect partner. Very good in the expertise in the region, perfect collaborators in a bigger crowd, in a global crowd, and always reliable.
من جنوب العالم وصلت لتقود أكبر
From the global south, she came here to lead the largest investigative journalism network in the world, comprising of more than 240 organizations. She's worked with multiple teams and has won numerous international awards. She has begun her career in Venezuela in data journalism and cross-border investigative reporting. We are honored to have with us the Executive Director of the Global Investigative Journalism Network, Emilia Diaz-Struck.
Wow. Well, I'm honored and humbled being here today at such critical times. I assumed the leadership of the Global Investigative Journalism Network 2 months ago at the Global Investigative Journalism Network. When ARIJ invited me, they asked me, could you talk about the future of investigative journalism at a global scale? And a lot has happened since then. And to talk and to think about the future, we need to recognize the present. And we can start looking at what is going on now at the moment. The war situation, of course, naturally now in Israel and Gaza, Ukraine, Yemen, Syria, conflicts around the world, right? But at the same time, we have also journalists killed, not only because of war and conflict. Right before coming, I heard about journalists being shot in Mexico too. Organized crime is also attacking our journalists around the world. Also, we have repressive regimes. We have repressive governments attacking our journalists. We have digital threats. We have other threats, not only to our lives, but to our sources and to the work we do as investigative journalists. In this very complex time and hard time, when we have journalists killed, journalists under threat, and journalists surveilled, there is also a light of hope. And that light of hope comes through collaborations and investigative journalists. That light of hope comes through the power of networks. But when we have all this, we also have an increasing number of investigative journalists in exile. We have disinformation. Disinformation not only being used against our citizens, but disinformation being used to discredit the work of investigative journalists. But that leads to a more opaque world. That leads to a world where our citizens need investigative journalism more than ever. At the same time, in this reality where we have all these complex threats and these hard moments and the context of war and organized crime and repressive regimes, we also have a more complex society with large numbers of records of data, data that crosses borders. And sometimes we have countries with a lot of opacity where there is nothing that we can find, and we find that data in other countries. And that brings and opens doors for us to be able to investigate, to mine the records, to mine the data, and then use technology that is also posing a threat as an opportunity for investigative journalism. Here at ARIJ, we also have some workshops on artificial intelligence. That also represents challenges and opportunities. Artificial intelligence could also help spread disinformation, but could be a very powerful tool to mine and explore and find hidden connections in large number of records. In this context that we have now, yes, we have more complex and sophisticated schemes used by governments, multinationals, organized crime that threat our citizens around the world. We have abuses of power, we have money laundering all around, we have inequality, and these abuses of power also including human rights abuses. We have victims. We're talking about victims of war, like deaths, but also sexual harassment, sexual abuse. We also have victims of inequality, poverty, as a consequence of corruption. And in that context, where you have so many powers in between, a lot of money behind war and conflict, companies sponsoring and supporting war, companies actually enabling human rights abuses in countries with repressive regimes, but also covering all this across all regions. We have also more nonprofits investigative journalism centers. The Global Investigative Journalism Network, of which ARIJ is a member, we have more than 244 nonprofit investigative journalism organizations in 90 countries. Many of them emerged as a result of the local context too, of saying, we can do something about it, we can investigate. If traditional media is closing, if we're being censored, journalists are finding more opportunities to continue doing the work, to inform our citizens, to expose wrongdoing, to do the watchdog journalism that our community needs. And in that context, where are we going, right? What is the future? So we're seeing already a bit part of it. Yes, we're talking about the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, Forbidden Stories at a global scale, then at a regional level, ARIJ, but also, for instance, in Latin America, Connect Us, CLIP, and our networks across various regions. But then we have all the member organizations and all the nonprofit centers that are emerging and the initiatives of journalists that are empowered to do the investigations that we need. So we are a community, and the future is in the community. The future is already part of the present. So we will continue building our future by staying stronger, by doing more cross-border collaborations, but not only doing collaborations for stories. We need to find other ways of collaborating in terms of sharing resources, tools, techniques, data, so that we can advance our craft, so that we can continue holding the powerful to account. So those resources, in terms of human resources, capacity building, sharing knowledge, come out of the power of networks. And we at GIGN are honored and proud to have so many networks and so many member organizations doing important work at a local, regional, and global level. Because collaborations are at all those levels. For us, it's about finding solutions together. Also, when we're talking about investigative journalism, it's not only about having the will and wanting to do investigative journalism. Things are getting hard. Things are getting complex around the world. So to do so, we need the right tools. We need the right training. And that's where we are there for each other. That's where networks will help us continue building that capacity and empower ourselves as a community so we can continue building the future of our craft together. At the moment, for instance, though we didn't expect it, we did a guide on how to report and investigate war crimes. That was in the context of the Ukraine war. Now, with the situation in Gaza, is more relevant than ever, unfortunately. And these resources are there for our community. And we want to hear from you. We want to hear from everyone in our community so we actually advance with the best of the traditional investigative reporting techniques, fact-checking, validation, human sources, but at the same time use the power of technology and resources about data, AI, so together bring the traditional with the opportunities and innovation so we can do the best investigative journalism we can at the service of our community, reduce the risks, and be ready for these complex challenges that the future is bringing to us. This is the moment, and the future is the power of the networks. Thank you.
شكراً. شكراً إيميليا. شكراً. Thank you.
Thank you, Emilia.
نتيجة واقعنا في العالم العربي
As a result of our situation or reality in the Arab world that is burdened by sadness and pains, we try to focus on our issues, and we make a mistake if we try to forget the pains of others. We are honored to have the friend of ARIJ for long hours. We have collaborated in cross-border stories with IMS Network, including the story that won the Golden Award last year in ARIJ. Our guest has more than 25 years of experience in investigative journalism and managing investigative organizations. He offered training to journalists in Ukraine, Russia, Belarus, and other places, in addition to establishing an investigative project targeting the debunking of or revealing the corruption in Ukraine. After the war, he had to leave his homeland. Oleg Kominak, our investigative reporter, friend, please.
Good afternoon. I'm honored to be part of this gathering and to speak to so distinguished audience. Yeah, and speaking about the collaboration in fragmented world, I would like to start probably with some past. Long time ago, at the very beginning of the global investigative journalism networks, one of my friends and colleagues told that organized crime is cross-border and we are not. We need to unite. And this actually became the idea and task and goal for the investigative reporters throughout the world, and resulted with the Global Investigative Journalism Network establishment and a lot of projects like based on the leaks like Panama Papers, Paradise Papers, and the efforts of the whistleblowers, reporters, coders, and fact-checkers ended up with the creation of the networks on the regional and global level. And ARIJ is one of the best examples of these activities. So where we are now, the world is getting more and more fragmented, meaning the absence of a shortage of connections within the society and between the groups of its members. And it goes on the global, regional, and national levels. These connections may concern culture, nationality, race, language, occupation, religion, income level, and other common interests. In worst cases, it ends up with the aggression and war like it happens in Ukraine and like it happens now in Gaza, in Palestine. So should the media and journalists follow the same path, making the fragmentation deeper? Or to try to become a communication bridge with fragmented and separated communities? If so, what needs to be done? Where should we go and how we should do this? Some cornerstones might help to understand where and how we might go. We need communication. This word already was voiced here. The communication is a kind of media might be being the platform for ideas and dialogue and information exchange. Media, one of the tools in this for dialogue that might be established. Another keyword is cooperation. This is about working with other media regionally, globally to achieve their own goals. But this is not enough. We need to set up coordination, which means that several media might be working together, being coordinated by one media or some editor or person that might direct the reporter's efforts to achieve the common goal. But on the top is collaboration. That is the goal of our forum here. Collaboration of journalists. This is about working with other journalists and media to produce something together and achieve the shared goals. Shared goals is another keyword. In other words, it is a joint development of something new, some new content or some new projects that might be vital for the whole world globally, and something that individual journalists or media could not have created themselves. It's essential to keep in mind the capability of new technologies in production and distribution of the information, emerging AI use, and availability of data globally. Other threats are growing amount of disinformation, propaganda, and lack of media literacy in the audience. And we need to address this as well, showing similarities and contradictions, debunking disinformation and propaganda, uncovering misconduct and abuse of the human rights, investigating war crimes. In other words, disinformation, war crimes, and fragmenting are getting global, and we need to go globally to address these issues. The professionalism is, but the most important thing is to stay human and professional, share the same values. The professionalism is how we are learning from each other, how we are collaborating, and these collaborations make us better journalists. And we learn from one another. This also should be seen as another motive for news organizations to support collaborations between the reporters. And the reporter is not about the ethnicity or race. That's about the professionalism and values. That's like a doctor. If he or she is professional and can save your life, the color of skin doesn't matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Oleg. Thank you. شكرا Oleg.
Thank you, Oleg. We'd like to refer to you that in minutes we will see a very dear colleague from Gaza. We will have with us Wael Ad-Dahdour to share with us.
ليشاركنا حفل افتتاحي ملتقى
to share with us this opening ceremony in ARIJ 16th forum. So we were accused, the near and the far accused us of excessive courage, recklessness, or even madness by continuing to hold this year's forum in light of the cancellation and postponement of all media and non-media forums in Jordan and the Arab world in such difficult times. And our mourning and grieving for our colleagues and souls that we have come to know closely and whose loss we grieve. We are honest with you in saying that it was not a presumption of foods or an uncalculated adventure. Or we in ARIJ have bet on two things. The first is our trust in you, ARIJians, and the ARIJ friends, that you all are aware of the importance of preserving ARIJ, of the importance of the right, freedom of expression for all, respect for all opinions, and the ability for transparent, professional, ethical discussion at all times. Our second bet is that a friend in time is a friend in need, and we must, in times of war, crisis, pain, psychological conflicts, not to isolate ourselves or go into depressions, get angry, or cry alone, but to unite our efforts and collaborate more and more, because the circumstances we're in deserves the collective action from us to expose the gross violations of human rights and corruption and crime, and that this is no doubt, without doubt, is the time for investigative journalism and fact-checking, and this is the time in which the forum should be held and not be postponed or cancelled. This forum could not have taken place without the volunteering of the speakers to be with us. They all came to attend in person. More than 100 speakers are our guests from 40 countries, half of whom are women. So thank you very much. We also thank more than 40 ARIJ partners in this forum, donors and partners. We tell them everything is positive in this forum. However, as for any mistake, we and ARIJ bear it alone. So please excuse us for any shortcoming. Every speaker has the full freedom to express orally or in writing and does not represent ARIJ or any of the partners. In this forum, there are 20 volunteer journalists who will cover the events from all the Arab world. You can see them around this room or outside this room. They're wearing a badge titled Newsroom. Please cooperate with them in covering and conducting the interviews. And we're proud to say that ARIJ and Safa Ashur is leading the newsroom this year. She's heading it. And I would like to thank the ARIJ Board of Directors for supporting us in every way possible and supporting our work and in guiding our strategy and steps towards holding us transparently and professionally. The legal advisor specialized in developing the legislations, public policies, and human rights, the lawyer, the passionate about women's empowerment and child protection, and the chairperson of the board of directors, Harim Abu Hassan, who we have exhausted with us in many details.
أنا كمان مش طويلة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين.
In the name of God, most compassionate, most merciful, and peace be upon Prophet Muhammad and his companions. Our dear guests, distinguished guests, thanks Samia, thanks Jody, thanks Ashraf, thanks Emilia for the wonderful and amazing speeches they made. Our distinguished guests, I would like to welcome all of you in the ARIJ Network 16th conference in your second country, Jordan. You have come all the way and have settled easily. I am honored to stand here before you on behalf of the board of directors of the ARIJ Network, Asil, Via, Zahira, Frederick, Andres. With due respect, ARIJ is the institution that works on training journalists from all over the Arab world in the field of investigative reporting as our contribution to strengthen democracy, to expose the truth, and to consolidate the principle of transparency. Despite our extreme happiness to have you here with us, but we cannot really ignore the most urgent issue related to the safety of journalists. And around here, there are pictures and stories of journalists who were killed during the past 2 months in an exhibition, an ARIJ exhibition entitled Staying Together and in order not to forget. Ladies and gentlemen, in our world today, journalism is under constant threats. Journalists who tirelessly pursue the truth are increasingly exposed and subject to killing, intimidation, violence, and harassment. We have seen very painful images from Gaza and Palestine over the past few weeks that would not have reached to us, have not reached us without the cameras and microphones of the journalists who risked their lives in order to document the events for us and for the history. This year, ARIJ supported journalists and access to information despite all the risks they confront. They were present in the Syria earthquake and the earthquakes of Syria, Turkey, and Lebanon, the war in Sudan, and the earthquake in Morocco, and the floods in Libya. All of this reminds us of the threats or dangers that journalists face as they seek to inform the public about important issues that are real and actual threats and risks. So it's necessary for us to stand together, united, to ensure the safety of journalists and defend the freedom of independent journalism, and to strengthen the approach of investigative reporting, which is a vital pillar in a democratic society, as it looks deeply into issues that could be ignored by others. It exposes corruption and holds those with personal interests accountable. During the year 2023, for more than 160 days, ARIJ network trained more than 3,400 male and female colleagues across the Arab world, more than half of whom were women. And we held more than 300 individual sessions with journalists on topics of personal security, digital security, legal, psychological, mental, and professional issues. Our team continued or followed more than 30 colleagues who were trained and who produced and published investigative reports at the highest levels. Ladies and gentlemen, this year ARIJ received more than 20 Jordanian, Arab, and international awards and recognition, and we signed about 40 MOUs with our partners in publishing, innovation, and fact-checking. The Arab Network for Information Fact-Checkers have done exceptional efforts in training, networking, and innovation. Us in the ARIJ network value the role of the governments, organizations, and individuals who support our work and all forms of investigative journalism and fact-checking. They play a major role in ensuring the safety of journalists and providing them with the necessary resources, training, and legal protection to carry out their work without fear. Thanks to your generous giving and continued support, we move ahead in our journey towards truth and transparency. Thank you for your continued support of this vital work. I would also like to pay tribute to the efforts of the ARIJ network led by the Executive Director Rawan Addam and the Flame of Activity. She and all of us have all of our gratitude and appreciation. Thank you, Rawan. And after this important conference, I would end my work as head of the ARIJ Board of Directors to become a member of this board. I would like to extend my special thanks to the person who established this institution, Rana Sabagh, the highly appreciated journalist in Jordan. She tried at the time to work in 3 Arab countries, and currently the network works all over the Arab world. The team has 40 colleagues from about 10 Arab countries. The number of beneficiaries
those who benefit from free services of ARIJ, investigative reporting, and fact checkers who are offered service. They are over hundreds, and that's why we should all feel proud, and Rana feels proud as well with this achievement. I would like also to appreciate the work of our colleague Kim Ghattas for her ongoing work in governing and administering the work of ARIJ. I was really honored to have met her and to have worked with her in the board of the network. From here, we salute the sacrifices made by all the journalists everywhere, especially our colleagues in Palestine, and we honor their dedication to seeking and uncover the truth in order to achieve justice. May God protect Jordan, an oasis of security and stability, and a home for everyone in distress under the presence of His Majesty King Abdullah II. May God protect him. May peace and mercy and blessings of God be upon all of you. Thank you for listening. Now, I'm at Samia's expense. Should I ask the members of the board of directors to come up to the stage to take a picture or not? So, Samia, it's up to you. Yes, please, members of the board of directors, including Rawan, of course, please come up to the stage to take a picture.
يبدو أن الزميل وائل
It seems our colleague Wael Dahdu has not been able to be online, but he sent a recorded message to all the colleagues, guests of the ARIJ 16th Annual Forum here in Amman and online on their digital platform. Let's see the recorded message by him. Hello everyone, may peace be upon all of you. First, I would start to salute you and to salute all the colleagues, all the writers, the journalists, all the attendees in this annual forum, in this important annual forum. I salute you from the heart of the Gaza Strip that is besieged, that is being under war, and that is resilient, steadfasting. This war on the Gaza Strip, I would say it's the first different war that is different from the previous wars against the Gaza Strip or aggressions. This war has brought so many atrocities that are different from what we have experienced as journalists during our coverage, our previous coverage in the previous wars against the Gaza Strip. And thus, we would not exaggerate if we say that we found ourselves facing a new journalistic experience and new reality in terms of journalism, bearing in mind that a Palestinian journalist in this war is not only a journalist who has some immunity, some protection, some specialties, or some logistic support. As opposed to that, today, the Palestinian journalist in the Gaza Strip has become supporting the people who are paying the most expensive price regarding the atrocities and repercussions of the war, the high prices, the pains, the grievances, of course. And this has been very clear, represented in the list of martyrs, our colleagues, more than 150 journalists who were targeted directly and indirectly. And there are, of course, injuries, but of course, there is also the targeting of headquarters, centers, and places of Palestinian journalists. However, the new kind is targeting the families of journalists, similar to what happened with my own family that was targeted in an area in the central Gaza Strip. And my family were displaced. They thought that they relocated, believing that the Israeli army announced it as a safe place, but it appeared that it was not a safe place. the Israeli army does not want the journalists to do much effort that could become even the minimum age of covering the minimum level of the atrocities and the grievances and the high prices that the civilians pay, and this historic moment through which the Gaza Strip is experiences, and that the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian people are experiencing, and they mean to use this old new policy, even if it's more intensified this time, targeting directly and indirectly the journalists, the Palestinian journalists. This would certainly, this for us as journalists, is certainly has a big message. We need to get the journalists from the media battle. And to get the journalists out of the battle, they want to implement bombardments, shelling, and to carry out their own attacks aside or away from the cameras of the journalists. And of course, this did not happen with the Palestinian journalists. Despite all these targeting, they continued to convey what happens and to cover what happens in the Gaza Strip, and to carry this the humanitarian message to the world. Us as journalists have paid high prices. We had so much pain. We had our own wounds, private and bleeding. We did not heal yet, but at the end of the day, we're still on top of our work, of our positions, despite the threats, the risks, the pains, the grievances. We're still working, and our voices are still being heard. Pictures are still being are flowing across the globe. Similar, continuing with this coverage and with of the developments in the Gaza Strip today, the truth collapsed and the shelling and the airstrikes came back to target us in a series of bombardments. We have more casualties and destruction, but the maximum is to continue with the coverage and to keep this our voices loud. This is what we try to do as much as we can. It's true that they bring us pain from every now and then, but as I said, as long as we breathe, as long as we're alive, we would certainly continue to loyal to the martyrs and to the blood of our families, to the blood of the casualties. We would continue to be loyal. This would put towards our duty at the maximum level of professionalism. Of course, what we can say in this respect, or that we promise you to continue with this coverage and with this loyalty as much as we can, as long as we are alive, hoping that you as colleagues, hoping that all the colleagues and all the relevant organizations to do as much as they can. You should not undermine any small or little work or work that you can do. So every institution can support the journalists and support the Palestinian people in this historic moment and humanitarian moment. To conclude, I salute and greet and appreciate you, each and every one of you, with due respect. My greetings and my colleagues' greetings, and I hope to meet you in better circumstances soon. Thank you. May peace be upon you.
شكرا للزميل.
Thank you very much, our colleague Wael Adahdoud. And due to the short of time, we had some announcements that we will postpone until the closing ceremony on Sunday the 3rd. I call on our dear colleague and a friend and a partner in all that we've prepared in order for us to make it to this point. I would like to ask the dear Rawan Daman, who leads our team, who has been with us for the past 4 years. Thank you, Samia, and in the name of God Almighty, it's very difficult to speak now after when we listened to Wael al-Dahduh and what he was subject to, him and his family and all our other colleagues. More than 50 years ago, he was assassinated in Beirut by the Israeli intelligence, the Mossad, when the memorable Palestinian writer, journalist, and a novelist, Ghassan Kanafani, about the homeland, he said, all of this should not have happened. Ever since the human opened his eye in the heart of the cave, the first homeland, billions of years ago, he had a choice of several options. He resorted to stone carving, which was the first step to send a message to tell whoever comes next that I have passed from here and this is my trace on the door. Afterwards, alphabetic writing was invented and started to send flask letters via sea, seeking communication with another human being across the border, as if that human was anticipating letters from other oceans. The person, the human, have in the natural innate to seek cross-border collaboration. Geography constituted the biggest challenge to man, who had no tools to move or to communicate directly. The Quran, the Holy Quran says, and indeed, we created you as nations and tribes so that you know each other. It's also stated in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, that it's not good for Adam to be alone, so create him a supporting counterpart. Perhaps in recent weeks, importance of cross-border collaboration has been establishing itself in our region more than any time ever. In its broadest sense, collaboration has begun to reinforce division by supporting one narrative against the other and presenting a story that contradicts the reality at the expense of the truth. Naturally, the most powerful and wealthiest political, economic, ideological, and media forces attract and protect and arm their supporters with statements that contradict the other narrative that seeks and insists on cross-border collaboration, by which means it wages a comprehensive existential battle to remain in the conscience of history and the present. With a direct approach, today we are experiencing and perhaps each and every one of you Arijians, the investigative journalism community and the fact checkers here in person or via the virtual world has a story to tell about misinformation you were challenging or exposed to, combated, debunked, refuted, or monitored in the flood of fake and misleading information promoted over the past weeks on various platforms and in different language. In a direct comparative, we are experiencing nowadays an unparalleled collapse in the world of values and human rights, which promotes a broader need for the necessity of comprehensive collaboration as opposed to promoting division, but as a need to end disinformation while supporting documented information and accountability, and to expose all methods that target the Arab Palestinians wherever they are. Journalists are not merely political activists and nor soldiers in a trench other than the trench of a living conscience. We stand here together to support each other and be with each other mentally, physically, morally, intellectually, informationally, skillfully, and ethically, because it takes two to tango. And without our cooperation, and collaboration, despite all the huge divisions around us, the right cannot prevail. Hence, I shall not fail to mention our Arisian colleagues in the Gaza Strip, who were unable to join us here in person due to the Israeli aggression and blockade, as well as some of our colleagues in the West Bank who were unable to be present with us in person due to the Israeli restrictions and blockades. We will not fail to mention our colleagues from Sudan who were unable to travel to join us here due to the military operations similar to our colleagues from Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, and even from Egypt. and dozens of others from the diaspora who do not possess ID documents. In this respect, the official Jordanian efforts that had facilitated the visas of hundreds of journalists for the ARIJ Forum exceptionally must be recognized despite the circumstances the region is witnessing. In light of ARIJ's pivotal role in supporting investigative journalism training and verifying information over a period of 17 years, and because security and safety in the holistic sense of personal, digital, psychological, legal, and professional aspects are an integral part of this support. We have worked under exceptional circumstances to provide urgent and emergency financial support, not from ARIJ's original budget for 2023, for journalists and information and fact checkers in Palestine. This support has exceeded $100,000 from European and US donors. Throughout this support, equipment, means of communication, and humanitarian and life aid were delivered to dozens of the independent journalists in the Gaza Strip. In addition to exceptional support for 3 platforms for fact-checking in Palestine and networking of Arab information auditors with more than 60 fact-checking institutions around the world. All gratitude and thanks to all donors, individuals, institutions, and agencies from all countries who kept an eye on the pulse of suffering and have not spared no effort to help. Here, I must extend a special greeting and gratitude to the board of directors of ARIJ and to my team, the ARIJ team, our dear colleague ARIJ, Reem Abu Hassan, the head of the board of directors, and a note of love to my colleague, despite this team, despite the tears and pain, collected themselves and their feelings to work day and night in exceptional circumstances to make it for this forum, and have stood this morning smiling and welcoming you all in our city, Amman, where you have arrived as honored guests. So if you could not,
فلنكتب على جدار الكهف هنا في الأول من ديسمبر عام 2023 أننا هنا من كل الوطن العربي والعالم أجمع نرفع الصوت عالياً لنقول لا لكل هذا الظلم ونطرق على جدران الخزان لأن الصمت والسكون خيانة
of the perpetrators and the right side of history, with principle, confidence, and determination to persevere for independent Arab investigative journalism, we collaborate across the borders in a divided world. Peace be upon them.
أدعو فريقي
I call on my team, ARIJ team, to come please up to the stage to take a photo, group photo, to see who have worked behind the curtains to make this forum happen, the anonymous soldiers.